Hello. Hi, I'm Commissioner Henri E. Brooks, and welcome. Welcome to Lean In with Commissioner Henri E. Brooks. I'm your host, and I have a guest today. I have a very special guest, someone that I care a lot about, and you will too when you hear him. Welcome, Pastor Fisher. Thank you so much for being here.
Commissioner Brooks, it is a deep honor, and you know the feeling is more than mutual. I think you stole your title from something I say in my sermons when I tell people lean in and don't log off.
Well, I did.
No, you didn't steal it. You didn't steal it. No. But it's,
Great minds think alike.
I was about to say, and you know, we had that
Yeah.
Black militant liberationist synergy for quite some time. So salute to you for your legacy and your leadership.
Wow.
And all of the trailblazing work that you've done for decades, and of course to be where you are in the commission right now, and for such a time as this.
For such a
Yeah.
is that kind of like Esther?
Yeah, it is. There you go. Look, you read a book or two. There you go. Yeah. Now, glad to be with you.
No,
Thank you.
I've got to say this. I appreciate having an opportunity to listen to you on Sundays because sometimes I've gone through a week
Mhm.
and a week of maybe things that were kind of disturbing
Mhm.
and didn't really sit right in my spirit. So then I log on
Mhm.
to your sermons on Sundays sometimes, and it reaffirms that I need to continue
Yep.
in what I'm doing, that my Blackness
Mm-hmm.
is okay,
Yeah.
and I'm right.
At least most of the time. So I am glad when I do see you log in. I have seen you log in several times, right? So I've seen your name pop up on the stream, and you would be somebody who I think is kind of like a model Abyssinian. And so part of what we aim to do is provide inspiration and information to people who are working in our community and on behalf of Black folks.
What we
And there's
need.
no question that you are. And so I'm glad that you are able to get, some of what you are looking for from a spiritual standpoint and even from a social standpoint. And so thank you for all of your presence and your support over the years for me and for Abyssinia. So thank you. I'm glad we're able to provide some of that for you.
Well, I'm glad. I'm just glad to get to know you. You're a young fellow.
That's relative now. That's relative, but I receive it.
I say that because I guess I miss being around. Maybe I shouldn't say because I'm around young people all the time, but young people with your mindset. Okay,
Yeah.
with the consciousness that you have,
Yeah.
no disrespect, no shade on anybody,
Right.
but I come from the old school where all of us had that consciousness, and we connected all the time on every level. So nowadays, I kind of miss that. But I want to just kind of let our viewers know a couple things. I know everybody know you, but just to remind them,
Yeah.
Up the Vote
Up the Vote
901,
901, yeah, we
okay,
founded
the
Up the Vote
People's
901.
Summit,
The Memphis
okay,
People's Summit.
Abyssinian Missionary Baptist Church. Is it missionary or Baptist church?
It's Missionary Baptist Church. We
Okay,
usually just say
okay.
Abyssinian Baptist Church.
Senior pastor,
Yep.
okay, and now a new title,
Yeah.
adjunct professor.
No, I'm actually the assistant professor. I'm
Oh,
a full-time professor
okay.
of religious communication and Africana studies at my alma mater,
Oh,
the Lemoyne
wonderful.
College, and the inaugural dean of chapel.
Oh
Yep.
my goodness! Now you talk about me being busy.
Yeah.
How did you have time? I'm thankful.
I always thank God that my wife Denise keeps me grounded, and gives me some balance in the midst of so much chaos in terms of the responsibilities from pastoring and now as professor and then community organizing and all of that kind of stuff. So I think it's by the grace of God.
You know what? And I can just what do you say? Co-sign that.
Yeah,
Because
yeah.
that's what I say. By the grace
By
of
the
God,
grace of God.
He wants you to do that. And I want to kind of segue to some things that I want to hear your perspective on. As you know, I sit on the county commission, of course, and we've had some things going on the county commission.
Yeah.
I just want you to share with our listeners and our viewers. Sometimes we get into positions, and we get kind of a little caught up, on a daily basis or whatever. You get caught up in what we're doing, who we are,
Yeah.
and
Or who we think we are. Yeah, no,
who we think we are.
right.
So, in some of the things, I believe that the public needs to get some understanding and clarity about.
Sure.
And let me just go right to it,
Yeah,
okay?
go ahead. Yeah.
Monday night,
Mm-hmm.
November 17th, there was a lot of disrespect,
Yep.
the loss of civility,
Yep.
meanness. It was totally not us
Right.
as Black people.
Right.
And when I say not us, I know what that looks like
Mm-hmm.
because I'm 76 years old
Mm-hmm.
and I know how we act.
Mm-hmm.
And Monday night was totally not us.
Yeah.
There was a horrible scene. Commissioner Ford
Mm-hmm.
disrespected the chair,
Yep.
a young Black woman who has served the county commissioner, served the school board, serving the community.
Yeah.
But most of all, she has been elected to the county commission, and she was elected to that position.
Mm-hmm.
And she was totally disrespected
Yeah.
for no reason. I need you to talk about, in general, how do we disagree? If how do we agree to disagree?
Mm-hmm.
And how do we act in public toward each other?
Yeah, so one I could say, Dr. Edmund Ford and I go back probably about 20 years.
Mm-hmm.
We taught together at Strayer University.
Mm-hmm.
He is the commissioner in the district that I live in,
Mm-hmm.
where the church is. He and I have had several candid conversations, and I know, well, I'm confident that all the stuff I'm about to say, he would say, I either have said to him or will say to him. He's just dead wrong.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely wrong, completely disrespectful. And I can understand that he may be dealing with a lot of emotional and kind of personal things
Yes.
that might have contributed. I don't know, and I'm definitely not making an excuse to it for it. But what I do believe we need to do a better job of reclaiming is the full scope of humanity for all of our people, even in elected office. And I know that we are in a very volatile and toxic political climate. And so the last thing you would want to see is Black folks being that dismissive, that badgering, that disrespectful, that condescending to each other, no matter what the subject matter is. And I think what this moment calls for amongst us is a much more politically and emotionally mature presentation, even when we have deep disagreements about how to move forward on certain items. And so I think it was extremely disappointing. I think he owes not only Commissioner Avant, but the people of District 9 an apology. And what I would have wished is when we have those kinds of feelings towards each other, and I've said this to many of our elected officials, those are governance conversations you have offline, you have directly with the person.
Absolutely.
And you do not cause such a public and political spectacle that now, instead of us talking about why the budget was not passed that would have increased the tax revenue and possibly would have had the commission in a position where they're not concerned about making payroll.
Absolutely.
Instead of us having that kind of conversation,
Absolutely.
we're having a conversation about personal attacks.
About personal attack. And that's what I want you to help the public to understand. I come from the perspective that, and I know you mentioned District 9, but I felt disrespected as a Black woman, even though the attack was not directed toward me, but I'm a Black woman.
Yeah.
So when you attack one, you attack all of us.
Yeah.
Every Black woman not in the room was attacked.
Yeah, I would say every Black person.
Absolutely.
And I would definitely affirm the specificity of the Black woman because you cannot dismiss those gender dynamics.
Right, absolutely.
And the way that fed into a kind of caricature and stereotype
He called it out
of Black male leadership is so disheartening.
Yeah.
That again, I just feel like those are things that should not ever really happen at all, but damn sure shouldn't happen in public.
Absolutely.
In a space that calls for a level of decorum and a respect for the office, even if you are not necessarily fond of the person holding the office.
Absolutely.
Because at some point, no matter who was in that office, and I've seen him, and I'm talking about Dr. Ford, be much more deferential and affirming to white male leadership
That's his pattern.
than he was to, this black sister, or, him and Mayor Harris have had their spats. And I even wrote about this saying, we need to stop with some of this public infighting. And again, I would hope that at some point, not only would cooler heads prevail, because I would give space. I think you probably remember several months ago, early on, when there was a kind of rift internally between some of the people on the Democratic caucus. And I was like, hey, y'all need to stop fighting this out in public. Y'all need to get in the side room with the proper, following the proper protocols with sunshine laws and all of that stuff, right? Definitely don't violate any of those legalities. But it's clear that at least 4 or 5 of the Republicans have some space where they're having some conversation where that stuff does not become a public spectacle.
We make it all about us, and I try my best, being the oldest person in the room 2 or 3 times. I've said to them, and I'm from that school, and that's why I love you so much. And we have that same kind of consciousness whereby we know that we take that kind of business and handle that, personal business, in the closet, in the office. We don't bring it to the public, and that goes for anything. Politics is strictly business. It's not personal, and it's transactional. Okay, so I would hope, and I keep saying, and I will continue to say, and I hope you have an opportunity to come and speak to our Black Caucus. We do not have to like each other to work together. It would be ideal, but if we don't, we are there to do the people's business. And there is a lot of business that the Black community needs to have handle. And most importantly, dollars, money needs to come into our community. So, one of the reasons I was just so happy that you agreed to come is because I know that people will listen. They'll hear. They need to understand what actually happened Monday night and what should have happened, how that should have been, what was wrong about it, and how it should have been addressed. So
even when you start talking about technical formalities, Robert's Rule of Order was one of the things that the commissioner kept bringing up. I don't ever believe those kinds of rules and laws should be leveraged in a way that allows someone to be disrespected and dehumanized. That's not the spirit of a rule of a law.
It's not.
Or a law. And so I just think that that's wrong. The last thing I'll say about that is something that I've been saying in some of the recent television interviews about just the political landscape and what's happening. And I think we've bought too much into the popularity contest of politics.
That's it.
And people end up in their echo chambers. And with there being, almost 1 million people in Shelby County, it is not hard to find 500 to 1,000 people who agree with you on any item with any perspective. And I think when people end up in those kind of echo chambers, what ends up happening is they think more highly of themselves than they ought, or maybe even more highly of their ideas than they ought to. And so they start saying what they represent in terms of the community. And you might have a constituency that fits within that framework, but I bet you $1 million that you also have other constituents who think differently. And so when you talk about, Commissioner Brooks, when you start talking about doing the will of the people and the work of the people, I think we have to do better with getting people in office that understand the broader scope of the people who they represent, even the people who didn't vote for them. But our turnout has been so abysmal that you have factions who feel like they have much more of a mandate than they actually have. And they end up yielding more power than they actually should. And that's how you end up abusing some of that power. So what I am hopeful for is that situations like this not only just rile people up, but get them motivated to be educated on the political issues that they are passionate about, and then turn that education to a voter
There
empowerment
you go.
so that our voter turnout is higher. Because if you have 15 or 20% turnout, then chances are only 2 to 3% of the electorate ends up deciding who gets into a particular office.
There you go.
And so now they think that they got some big, huge representation when really it's 2, 3, 5%.
fluke.
Right. And so if we can get the percentages into the 50 and 60 percentile, then all of a sudden you have people in office who have a better perspective on what adequate representation looks like.
And I'm glad you said that. It's a good segue, but let me just say this. That's what I'm working on. I've had a series of voter education forums, and I was talking earlier about we registered people. We have people registered to vote, and that's what we've been focusing on. But if you have 15,000 people registered to vote and you only have 2,500 to come out, something is wrong.
Right. I've been saying that since we launched Up to Vote 901. You know,
Well,
you just realize that you don't necessarily have a voter registration problem. What you have is a voter engagement problem and a voter education problem.
Education problem.
And since people are not adequately educated on the issues, it also causes, Commissioner Brooks, a lot of apathy because people get riled up and then they get upset about something and then they get upset with the wrong person. And then when you find out that you were upset with the wrong person and you expended all of that energy and nothing really changed, you start saying, well, it don't matter who you have in the position.
Right. I'm just going to stay at home because they're going to do what they want to do anyway.
Yes.
But that's exactly what we were talking about. I should have had you here. Earlier, we talked about how you need to make sure that we would connect voting to survival issues and concerns in your community, in your life. And you need to get to know the people who are running for office. You can't wait for someone to tell you about them. I mean, you can't just wait for just because he's your fraternity brother.
That's the popularity
your sorority
contest.
sister.
That's the popularity
your church
contest.
member. No.
Or because you like how they dance or sing.
Oh, I like her hair.
Yeah, you know.
That's how we've done it.
Yeah.
And I say it, and I've been saying on the podcast. I said on my during my voter education forums throughout my district.
Yeah.
We must be independent voters. We must be informed voters. We have to do our own homework. We've got to find out about these characters. You know, what are they doing? What have they done in the community? What do you stand for? What's your position? And not just on anything. What is their position on the things that you care about? If they're running for an office in your district, and all those county offices going to be up, in May. So get to know the candidates. Do your homework. Go to forums. Google them. I mean,
email uptovote901@gmail.com. Ask any question you want to ask. We'll do our best to get you the information as best as we can.
I was going to go there. I want to talk about that. I know we had it was the Up to Vote 901.
The People Summit.
The People Summit. Okay.
That's right.
So now, what did we learn from the summit?
Yeah, I think we learned where some of the elected officials, where they stand on some of the issues that are important, and they were willing to be held accountable and put on public record. You know, some of the things that you remember. If you remember our exchange at the end, I can't remember exactly what the question was. It was something that was coming before the commission, and I was asking you if you were in agreement with it. And for a while, you were answering the question with necessary context. And I said, Commissioner Brooks, I understand. I need a yes or no. Please explain, right? And then you said, well, yeah, I can't remember whether it was yes or no. But see, that's what we provided there. Like you get because I understand that some of our elected officials sometimes feel cornered, right? And you feel like, I can't say this without saying these other parts. And then sometimes people will not allow for the elected official to provide the broader scope of rationale. And so, Up to Vote, we don't do that. And so I was definitely pressing you and your colleagues,
Mm-hmm.
when it comes to a question, let's just say, do you think that the taxes should be raised? You got every right to explain why you think they should or should not, but it's our responsibility to make sure that you are clear in saying, yes, I think they should be, or no, I think they should.
Well, let me just kind of put this on the table for sure. I never feel cornered. I really don't. I am very confident in my record.
Good.
I'm confident in the work that I do for the people, but that's the teacher in me.
Yeah. Yep.
I always want to give context. I always want to explain. I always think that, I need to take this opportunity to share some information. But that's important to do that. So how will that inform what you do coming up, the People's Convention?
Yeah, so I'm glad you asked that because I need to make some clarifications,
Okay.
right? One, the Memphis People's Convention proper
Okay.
that we revived in 2019 after the one in 1991. So people should know, between 1991 and 2019, there was no Memphis People's Convention. And so when we revived it, it was about the city elections because, as you know, at the time, the city elections were completely nonpartisan with no runoff
Right.
and no primary. So it was almost inevitable that if there were a lot of African American candidates, you were going to split the black vote.
Yeah.
And so the aim was to educate people on the issues and try our best to unify people around a consensus candidate to minimize the likelihood of vote splitting. In the county elections, because there are primaries for the county elections as well as the federal elections,
Right.
we would do the people's primary. And that is an opportunity for us to get ahead of the primaries and then provide people with an opportunity to see who consensus candidates might be even in the primary. Because, like I know, when it comes to a countywide election, chances are if you win the Democratic nomination in most of the county commission seats, in the countywide seats, you're generally going to win the general election in August.
Right.
And so if we were trying to wait, it would be kind of mute. And so that's what we would be doing during our county election cycles. And in the off year, when there is no election, as was the case in 2025, we would do the Memphis People Summit. And that's when you bring the elected officials together and you get to hold them accountable for where they stand on issues that are important. And as you said, you are so confident in your record, right? You get to say, hey, here's where I voted on this particular issue and here's why. And we always, I just really applaud anyone who is willing to explain exactly why they made the decisions that they made. And I just think sometimes elected officials are given a kind of reductionist platform and they're not viewed in the full scope of an ideological or philosophical, roundness and depth and texture. So those were the things that's the cycle for Up to Vote 901. When there is a municipal election, we'll do the Memphis People's Convention leading into the municipal election because there are no primaries. When there are primaries, we'll do the People's Primary, which is the primary election before the real primary election.
Did y'all get that?
Yeah. And then
we'll keep you informed.
Yeah. Y'all can always rewind and press play. Lean in, don't log off.
I love this guy.
and so whenever there is no election that year, we always want to do a measure of accountability for the people who are in office.
I think it's wonderful. I think it's so important. That's important to hold people accountable, and they need to know that they're being held accountable, and that will make for a better community when people know that they're being held accountable because they'll do their jobs. And, I come from old school. I'm just going to say it just like it is. When you go to the polls and vote for me, you have hired me. So I'm your employee, which means I need to go to work for you. If I don't do my job, you do not leave me in office. It's just like, working at, some company. You get an evaluation, you haven't done your job, you get fired, you get your papers.
If my students start scoring me low on my teaching evaluations.
Okay.
Eventually, I'm going to have to go to the chair of the department and explain why my teaching scores are so low, and they might give me an opportunity to improve it.
There you
And
go.
if I don't, then I'm going to end up in the vice president of academic affairs office, and they're going to say, "Thank you, but your services are no longer needed at
Thank
this
you for
institution."
your service.
Yeah, you know,
Goodbye.
right. And so I think you're bringing up one of the most concrete points in politics over the last 50 years. It's the way that our system has been structured. You got so many people who are not doing a generally good job in the office, but keep getting reelected. And I'm arguing that they are getting reelected with the very low turnout numbers. Because all they got to do is manipulate a small number of people, generally through the popularity that we refer to as name recognition.
Oh, name recognition.
And so long as you have name recognition, then the likelihood of you being reelected to office is high, especially if you don't have term limits and all that stuff. So it's a lot of stuff that we need to do to get our people in a better position so that the people who are in office end up recognizing that they do work for the people.
Absolutely. And you know what? Speaking of term limits, let me just say this whole school board issue debacle, it was not and it is not about anyone wanting to keep their friend, from my perspective, in office.
Okay.
What is important about the school board and aligning those elections of the school board members who were just elected and who still have terms, time on their term, is invalidating the vote of people who voted in 22. And see, that bothers me because see, at one point in time, I didn't have the right to vote.
Yeah.
Based on my color.
Yeah.
So there is no way that I'm going to stand for.
Yeah, and even the logic around, as somebody who has done some political organizing, I know just because you stack a ballot does not increase voter turnout. If that's the case, the Memphis municipal election has 17 people running for mayor. If it's about stacking the ballot and that's increasing turnout, then we should have had record-breaking turnout, and we did not.
It was
abysmal turnout, per usual. And
Yes.
so part of the logic around that was just wrong. I agree with many of y'all that I think from a constitutional standpoint, it is in violation. I think it definitely undermines people's voice. And a point that I don't think has been amplified enough. People have to learn the political maturity of making a bed and then having to lie in it.
Hello.
You do not, because the last thing I would want is for a bunch of non-Black constituents and non-Black elected officials to just simply not like something that a Black elected official has done and say, because I don't like it, I'm about to go through these measures and shorten your term. And cut your term short and then make you have to, campaign again. And this is regardless of how you feel about the person in the office, it's about the principle here.
Absolutely.
And so political maturity means I recognize that I either went to the ballot box and helped put this person in office, or I stayed at home.
There you go.
And helped put this person in office.
And you got to understand that. Staying at home.
Yeah.
Not doing anything.
Yeah.
Not making your voice heard.
Yeah.
Yeah. That's hurtful.
Yeah.
That does not help. So, we all have a responsibility.
Let me interject and I'll wrap this up, because my point is, just because somebody in office does something that you are not fond of while they're in office does not mean they need to have their term limit shortened. Sometimes you have to mature enough to say, I need to be wiser in the selection process. And I need to be more engaged in the process of decision making to ensure that what I believe should happen is going to happen. And I also have to be conscious of the fact that I am one of thousands of constituents.
What you just said says to me, I need to remind people, politics is not personal.
Yeah.
Just because someone is that business. Politics is strictly business, and we need to understand that. And I know we're almost out of time, and I'm gonna have to have you back. But I've got to ask you about the mayor's race coming up. The county mayor's race is coming up, and I just read on social media or heard on one of those newscasts that we have another candidate in the race. So we have 8 people now?
Yeah, I think that's one of the counts.
Okay. So what is your take on that with all of these folk running for county mayor?
Look,
How's they going to
one of the local news stations asked me
shake out?
about this. And so, I say, whoop-de-doo. If somebody else files and if they meet the qualifications to run, go for it.
Okay.
Right? And I am not concerned about the vote splitting because it's a primary. Now, if someone with, and I'm not talking about any person in particular, so we'll just make it clear. And I will say anybody's name if I wanted to. So I'm saying I'm not talking about anybody in particular. I'm saying as a matter of political aspiration. If a person does not have the qualifications,
there you go.
If the person does not have the credentials, if the person does not have a track record, and we end up electing them into office, shame on us.
Absolutely.
And it goes right back to what I said about the political maturity. If that's the bed you make, then you have to lie in it and live with the consequences. And so what I would like to believe is that the people of Memphis, especially, and Shelby County more generally, are wise enough, no matter who gets in there, to weigh their options and pick who they believe to be best. I know a lot of people feel, certain ways about the current mayor, Mayor Lee Harris. I say this. I would pick Lee Harris over Dave Lenore 1,000,000 times.
Oh, absolutely.
And so when we start making our political assessments of how people are operating in office, I would hope our political memory is long enough to have a contextual understanding of what the options were.
Okay.
When you want better options, then you can't complain if everybody's jumping in the race, but you're saying you want all of these wonderful options. And I think it's important for us as community members, especially those of us engaged in political organizing, to create an environment where the proper types of candidates can emerge.
Yes.
Hence the Memphis People's Summit, the Memphis People's Convention, the Memphis People's Primary. And so I don't feel any way about anybody who has thrown their name in the hat. If they meet the qualifications, it should be well within their legal rights to do it. And it is the citizens' right to make sure that we are assessing the people who are applying for this job and making sure that the person that ends up being hired is the person who is best suited to implement the things that we believe should be implemented in the community.
And we need to know what issues we're concerned about, and we need to make sure that the issues we're concerned about, our families concerned about, our friends, our church, our sorority, our fraternity, they are all aligned. They're aligned with the candidate.
That's right.
So, and how will you know that? You got to do your homework. You got to go to forum.
Yes.
You can have a forum.
You can host one.
Question and answer at your church. Just have them all to come. But we got to get off the couch.
Yeah.
And then you got to do your part. We all have a role to play. So again, I know we're out of time. I don't want to let him go, but I'm going to ask you this. Have you ever thought about running for office?
I am in office. Pastor is public office.
Political office. It's
look,
political.
You know how the church is. So God knows I was elected into that office. As of last Sunday, my key still worked.
I'm going to narrow it down.
So I am saying this to say, I sincerely believe I am in the space that I have been destined to be in.
Yes.
I don't have any aspirations to be a county commissioner or a city council person or a mayor or any of those elected offices. I believe it is my duty as a faith leader. It is my duty as a college professor. It is my duty as the dean of chapel to make sure I'm engaged with those of you who are in those positions and I'm providing my perspective from my experience.
Absolutely.
And I'm going to do what I can to provide as much information and inspiration and energy and empowerment to the people who help elect y'all. I think that's my responsibility. So beyond that, no, I don't think I'm called to do that, and I'm not interested in running for none of that stuff. Y'all can be in the meetings all day talking to white folks about their money. I got better things to do with my black time.
That's one black job you don't want.
Right. No, my black job, that ain't in my black job description.
Well, listen, and all of that you said, you do it well.
Thank you.
Extraordinarily
Thank
well.
you very much.
I appreciate you. I'm so glad to know you. I'm just so glad that to be able to tune in to you on Sundays, and I'm committing myself to making it there.
Oh yeah, come on.
I'm definitely, because I know I'm an Abyssinian.
You are an Abyssinian. I affirm that. I stamped that. Abyssinians, y'all heard what she said, right? She got the pastor stamp, okay?
Okay. Listen, thank you all so much. We've had so much fun. I
Always.
love you. I
Love you
love
too,
you. I
sister.
love you. And I love you all. Want you to tune in again. You can get this podcast anywhere. Anywhere you pick up a podcast, check out Lean In with Commissioner Henri E. Brooks.
Tell them
Thank
lean
you so
in, don't
much.
log off. Tell them lean in, don't log off.
Lean in, don't log off. Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a great one.